Just thought I'd do a quick demonstration of this. Let me share my screen here. Screen share, desktop. All right. So this is kind of the front end of it. I'm just kind of doing this as sort of a tech demonstration also where I can practice not saying so many times when I speak when doing these tech demonstrations, but this is kind of the front end. I'm just calling it real estate with 3 threes, kind of going with the Web3 theme for this project. But if we go in the back end here, I'll briefly go over how all of this is working. So we have 2 smart contracts. One is called escrow, one is called real estate. With this real estate, that's just sort of minting a token that's going to be associated with the real estate property. So an NFT token, and it's going to have certain attributes to that token. It's going to have data, metadata associated with, in this instance, we could probably get the metadata. I think it's right here. It's just going to be the name of it, the address of it, the description of it, an image, or you could probably do multiple images of it. These images are sourced or uploaded to IPFS, which is like a file storage modality. And then there's just different attributes, the value of it. This is in Ethereum. So the price in Ethereum, these are just kind of arbitrary things put in, and then it gives information about it. It's a condo, number of bedrooms, etc. But anyway, you can put like any sort of information relating to metadata for this when you're minting one of these ERC-721 NFT tokens, non-fungible tokens. And then there's an escrow contract. And in this escrow contract, it kind of gives information for putting money into an escrow contract. So a buyer is going to send some funds into it, and it's going to monitor how much is being sent into that. So let's look at the functions of this. One of the functions is list, and that's just for being able to list something for sale, and that's going to be on the website. For instance, this one is owned. This penthouse, it's owned. It's not currently listed. The owner of that would have to call that list function in order to list it for sale. And then deposit earnest is just kind of like making a deposit so that there's 4 different people that can interact with this contract. There's a buyer, a seller, an inspector. And right now the inspector just gives an arbitrary approval. Basically, they say true, this property has been approved. And then there's a lender also, and it's kind of set up right now where just the buyer puts up half the money, and then the lender can also go through and approve the sale to put up the rest of the money. And in order, this is another function, it's finalized sale, which basically means that the property ownership is transferred from the seller to the buyer. And in order for that to happen, these conditions need to be met. The inspection must be passed for that property. It must be approved by the buyer. It must be approved by the seller, and it must be approved by the lender. Additionally, I think I also have some, and okay, I said here, the inspection must be passed. So inspection passed and approved by all 3 parties, and the transaction will go through. And there's a function where the sale can be canceled. That's if the information doesn't match up properly. And we can get the balance that's been paid into that contract. For instance, if the buyer puts in half the money, sends the money into that escrow contract, we can get the amount that was sent into that can be read by anyone on the blockchain. That's the basics of it, and this code kind of runs how that all works. the rest of all this code is just things that sort of there's some testing files, and then there's some things for how the front end interacts with the back end and everything. But anyway, so we have it running right now on a local host. We can connect to our MetaMask wallet here. In my MetaMask here, I just have kind of gone ahead and instantiated 4 different accounts that I'm just calling like the buyer, the seller, the inspector, and the lender accounts. So just to do a demonstration of how this might work. So this is listed for sale here. So I'm going to connect to, let me connect to my buyer account here. I'm connected to my buyer account, and then let's go ahead and click buy. So that's going to initiate a transfer. It's selling for 15 ETH. So I'm going to initially send 5 ETH, and then I'm going to have the lender send the subsequent 10 ETH to cover the property once everything is sort of ready to go. Okay, so we confirm that, and we're going to see that I did send that. I sent that 5 ETH. I also approved the sale. So the buyer has approved the sale on his end. He's basically said he's ready to go. He's ready to receive the funds from, basically be liable to the lender. All of that obviously hasn't been built out yet, but he's putting that in. So let's go and check on what the inspector sees, for example. So we're going to go to the inspector, going to connected. Now we're through the same interface. We're connected to the inspector's wallet. So this would be like pretend we're on a completely different computer, and some inspector is sitting at his computer, and he went through, he did all of his checklists and everything. So he's logged in, he connects with his MetaMask, and he's going to say, all right, yep, everything's good. I'm going to improve this inspection. So basically that person is specially qualified based on their MetaMask address, based on this address, to approve this inspection, approve this transaction. So I'm simply going to click confirm. And let's try that. Did it go through? Double check. Approve inspection. I believe it went through. Let me double check my transactions here. Activity, contract interaction. Let's see if that's what that was. Yeah, so 1450, that's the time. So a small amount that in order to do that approval, it costs a small amount of money, which on the back end, we could have the buyer pay for all of that, but that's just kind of the cost of doing business. Every transaction on chain costs a little bit of money. So that approval went through. It costs basically a small amount of Ethereum here. So it's improved by the inspector. So now let's go. We're going to go through the lender now. So this is like the lender is seeing all of that went through. So he is going to check out everything. Everything's all good. Everything is up to speed on his lending agreement with the buyer, which that's kind of alluding to some of the things that I'm sending this to you, Cameron, alluding to some of the agreement that could be going on in the back end between the buyer and the lender. So he's going to approve the lending, and let's confirm that. So additionally, we're going to be sending that last 10 Ether required to cover. Remember, the buyer put up 5 initially. So we're going to confirm. And that ETH is getting sent now to the escrow. So now there's 5 ETH from the buyer, 10 ETH from the lender in this escrow contract that's being held there. So if we did look at that get balance function, we would see 15 total Ether. And now finally, we're going to go as the seller. The seller is going to as if they are going into this, they're logging into this website by themselves. They're going to go here and okay, they can see that the amount of money that they wanted, that they listed it for, it's in that. They might be able to look at that get balance and see, all right, the full amount is in that contract. Everything from the seller's perspective, they don't, I guess they can see that the approval has been done and everything, but for them, all they care about is their money's there. So they're going to click approve and sell. And they're going to confirm. And let's confirm. Boom. Now this says owned by. This address is the buyer's address. So that ownership has been transferred from the seller, who is the person who's connected to it now, to the owner. And in my seller account here, I'm going to see that I was just sent another bit of another 15 Ethereum. So I ran through this, everything initially added 1,000 ETH in each one, but I did the first one as a test, and now I can see it was 20 from the first transaction, another 15 minus a few gas costs to do all of these little functions, but I've got that amount, and yeah, it's now owned by the buyer. And we can double check. So just make sure, starts with 39F, ends in 2266. Let's look at the buyer's address. Ends in 2266, 39F. So yeah, the buyer owns this now. If I imported those NFT tokens into this, we would see that this buyer does indeed have those tokens in their ownership, and yeah, everything seems to be working in a pretty simple functionality way, but I think you could start to get some ideas for how this could be extended, especially to operate and handle the back end of that financial agreement you had kind of mentioned.